Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another round of sound. This is the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown. I'm Bob Pompeani. Thanks for joining us tonight. Lots to get into, as always. The continuing saga of Le'Veon Bell, although this week we will have the beginning of the franchise tag period. What will the Steelers do? We'll talk about that. Riley Sheahan has played very well, including tonight. So what does that mean for Jim Rutherford moving forward at the trade deadline? We'll get into that. Bob Huggins is upset. We'll tell you why and talk about it. But the #1 topic tonight on the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown will be the Pirates, who had a very interesting week down at Pirate City. Here to talk about that is your panel, left to right on your television screen, Andrew Fillipponi from the Cochran Pony Show and also the national CBS radio show. To the left in the middle, it's Tim Benz, Trib Live and the Pittsburgh Steelers Radio Network. And to the right, Paul Zeise of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette and, of course, the Paul Zeise program on 93.7 The Fan. Lots of stuff came out of Pirate City this week, including today's quote by Neil Huntington. Quote, "We want to win. We have the exact same goals as Harris and Freese do, which is to win a World Series. That's why we're here. We made the moves we made to put this team in a position to win a World Series." This goes directly against what he said back in November when he said the Pirates are better served with Cole and McCutchen in their starting rotation and lineup. So I'm going to start with you, Tim Benz, on this. We heard what David Freese says. Who do you think he was directing most of his anger at?
Everybody. I think he was directing it at Clint Hurdle. I think he was directing it at management. I think he was directing it at the younger players in the clubhouse. But it doesn't come out unless management does what it does. In other words, if Garrett Cole and Andrew McCutchen are still on this team, I don't think that you hear those comments from Freese. The catalyst for all of this, the feeding the gremlins after midnight, was getting rid of Garrett Cole and Andrew McCutchen. That's why he said what he said. And then any other feelings he had about the other branches, the other tentacles of the team, came out as a result of what happened with Cole and McCutchen.
Well, I was looking for a new favorite Pirate now that Andrew McCutchen is out of town. And I'm guessing when the Pirates come to PNC Park for their version of opening day, Freese will be the only guy that gets a standing ovation, kind of the reception he's used to in St. Louis. I'm happy that he said it because I thought pretty much he was dead on, Bob. This franchise, and we're going to go through Neil Huntington in a second, they say a lot, but they don't do a lot. And I like that someone who comes from a winning organization like the St. Louis Cardinals didn't leak it anonymously to a reporter. He stood at his locker and he put his name on it, and he was exactly right.
I think that's the biggest thing. He's got credibility because he played for so many years with the Cardinals, and he understands how an organization like that operates. I think his tirade really didn't leave anybody untouched. I mean, he talked maybe about the players and the culture in the locker room. He talked about Clint Hurdle a little bit. He talked about the owner, worrying about being in the red, and he talked about management and the moves they made. So, to me, David Freese understands what a winning organization feels like and looks like, and for the last 2 years, the Pirates haven't been that.
And it's more damning when it comes from someone who's currently on the team as opposed to someone who leaves. Garrett Cole said some things when he was introduced in Houston, but to have a guy who's actually on the current roster come in and say that, and then today Josh Harrison came in, and Andrew, he didn't back off what he pretty much said earlier, which is if you're not going to be serious about this, then trade me. He didn't use those same words today, but he hasn't really changed, so I'm wondering, him, Cervelli, other guys of that nature, do you think the Pirates are going to go through with just trading them down the road too, or where is this all headed?
I would. I mean, they won't put the R word out there, rebuilding, but that's exactly what they're doing. I mean, they're complaining about last year's culture, right? That there's not an environment or an atmosphere to win. That's what Freese said. What is the environment going into this season? You've got two of your leaders, maybe your best all-around player in Harrison and one of your veteran leaders, both feeling comfortable about coming out and ripping the organization before the season starts. That's not a toxic situation, but that's not exactly a we're all in or we're tugging on one rope all together. So it looks like the Pirates, I think, have an issue on their hands.
Yeah, I think to your direct question, Bob, about those two guys, Harrison and Cervelli, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't Cervelli making the most now of the remaining
by 1 million
Pirates?
more, 11 to 10 million. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so they don't need that for a catcher who doesn't hit a lot of home runs, no power. So I think they can, and they probably will want to get rid of Francisco Cervelli. Harrison might be a different story because you can play so many positions. You actually get bang for your buck there by plopping him around the lineup here and there. They might see enough value there because he can do so much. He's only getting one salary, and they can wean other guys here and there throughout the minors before they come up to the majors. I can actually see them holding on to Harrison because they see value there, but maybe other teams will by the time the deadline rolls around, and they can trade him then.
That's what I think. I think if they're like 4 games or more out of the wild card, or it's clear to them that they're not contending, I think Cervelli, Harrison, maybe even Mercer, Ivan Nova, I think they're all guys that are going to be in danger of getting traded out of here because they make money, and that's, they're veteran guys that make money. Or in Mercer's case, he's a guy they're probably going to lose, at the free agency. So this is what they're going to do, and I think David Freese even hinted at that.
So let me ask you this then, Tim. Why does Neil Huntington continue to come out with this line that they're in it to win a World Series, when clearly the 7 guys they brought in here in these 2 trades, I don't think one of them is in the top 100 of ranked prospects. Why do they continue to go down that verbal path, and who do you think's buying it?
They are tone deaf. I used that phrase in the Trib this week, and I think it's 100% accurate. I don't think they understand that their fans are more mad at them for how they've handled the PR after the trades than the trades themselves. I mean, there were a lot of Pirate fans who were behind Neil Huntington for a lot of moves he made coming out of the 3 consecutive playoff seasons. And even though they didn't make a lot of sense to many of us, there were a lot of Pirate fans who said, we trust these guys because they got us out of the 20 years of losing.
Tim, it's not only their fans, it's their own players.
Yeah,
it's David Freese and Josh Harrison.
I don't have to stop at the fans, but I think the fan bases matter at the spin than they are the trades themselves. They would have been willing if Huntington and Frank Coonley and Nutting didn't try so hard to make it sound like they're still trying to win. I think they'd have more support than what they've got right now.
And the thing is, they keep making it worse and worse with everything they say. I mean, I wrote a column, I think, a week and a half ago that they should just shut up and let the season come, because the more they talk, the worse off they are. Sunday, we've got Neil Huntington responding to David Freese, and he says, yeah, people are upset. They're upset because some of these free agent names, they have better backs of the baseball cards than the guys we have, but we believe in the guys we have. Yeah. In other words, people are upset because we're not going to sign veteran players who have proven they're good.
You got to make the majors before you get a baseball card.
In other words, Colin Moran's better than Mike Moustakas, or
exactly.
Joe Musgrove is better than Jake Arrieta.
Right, exactly.
My patience is worn thin with Huntington. To me, I no longer put him in like the elite, brainy general manager category. To me, he just does an owner and management's bidding. Okay, Hurdle, the same thing. To give this guy a 4-year extension after he produced 75 wins last year, and then he's got the nerve to get up there earlier this week and say, this place is going to explode when we win the World Series. Don't insult your fans' intelligence with comments like that. You look at the managers that got fired this offseason, and Clint Hurdle, he only has a job because this entire organization settles. They're not trying to win a World Series. Everybody's happy winning their 74 games and making a lot of money.
Yeah, making a lot of money. And listen, you're at the end of the road, perhaps. I understand that, but that's not a good thing to do, especially when the players themselves know what's going on. All right, now it's time to talk about some other big trades that we have going on. You see right now, at number 1 Cochran, they're giving you an extra $750 over Kelley Blue Book value for your trade. That's right. It's all part of their Auto Showstopper event, where you're also going to get savings up to $12,000 on leases for $99 a month. The savings go on, but the Auto Showstopper event ends February 28th. All at number 1 Cochran, all of their locations, and Cochran.com. Don't go away. We continue with more discussion next. The number 1 Cochran Sports Showdown is brought to you by number 1 Cochran, Go One Better, and by Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield. Have a greater hand in your health.